Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T 142, aka When the Drums Come In Fast. It's a futile fall showdown with all 525 songs going head to head, but not tonight. Tonight, we're lucky to have Paul Hanley, drummer of seminal Manchester post-punk band The Fall. If you need any more explanation than that, you're in the wrong place. Paul,
I think so. Yeah,
thanks
it'd be
for
a bit
coming.
weird, that wouldn't it?
Yeah. How are you doing today? You all right?
I'm marvelous. Thank you very much. Thanks for asking. Yes.
Very good. Ready for a trip to Preston this evening?
Oh, always ready for a trip to Preston.
Very nice. No Wigan gig. We don't have a venue
No,
anymore.
Wigan, no.
Yeah.
After Fall, ever played Wigan?
I think they did one gig much later, like 2014, 2015, something like that. I was long gone from Wigan town by that point, so unfortunately I didn't see it. I'm joined by Alistair, the Pemberton Walker. How you doing, Al?
I'm good, yeah. I've got my week off, loving it. Went for a nice big walk from Ironside to Silverdale yesterday. Lovely.
Beautiful. Looking forward to this chat, Al?
As ever, yeah, this should be an interesting one. It's like third drummer now with former drummer of The Fall we've had on, so it is quite interesting.
We're collecting them one by one, but I think Paul's the best. Don't have to say anything.
Oh yeah. Well,
all right. So what we've done is I've let Paul in on the secret so he knows what's coming next. But we asked everyone on our Facebook groups and all friends what best 10 Fall drum tracks were. And so in order of 10th to 1st, I'm going to start off by playing. We'll just have a little bit of a smidgen of a listen to them. First one up at number 10 was Gutter the Quantifier off This Nation's Saving Grace, which of course was a funky side joint. So let's
it's Carl. It's Carl.
Oh yeah, what do I know? It's a good start, isn't it?
Hey,
a good start.
That research is a marvellous thing, isn't it?
I know, unbelievable. Carl who?
Carl, yeah.
Let's have a listen. Yeah, exactly. Let's have a listen to This Nation's Saving Grace. I'll play the wrong one here as well. So got the Quantifier live in Leeds, live in London. So it's a bit dark, that one. Now, that is live at the Astoria in, I think, 87. So
that probably is.
That is Psy. That's where I was getting myself mixed up, if I can make an excuse. But yeah, I'm not sure of your knowledge of what happened after you left the mighty institution. But what is your thoughts on the Gutter the Quantifier and that kind of era of This Nation's Saving Grace?
I love This Nation's Saving Grace. I think it's possibly one of my favourite albums. I think it's my favourite Fall albums. I think it's fantastic. Yeah, it's about as polished as you'd ever want the Fall to be. I think, really. I mean, you know, there's certain things could do with a bit of polish, and some things where polish is completely the wrong thing. But I think that album works really well.
Yeah, we've gone either way on it. So, like, as a whole, we've really liked it, but the individual tracks haven't fared that well. Only, I think, Paintwork and Dama Suzuki's kind of gone through, even though they've all been deliberated on it. There's something about it that, maybe...
What's not that? My fault at all. I love that LP.
I know you do. I know you do.
Well, maybe it stands at a whole, so it splits the vote. If people like everything, then it's difficult to pick one out, isn't it?
No, I think that's the case. So what I'll do is I'll drop in along the way names, like I said, of colleagues, and obviously the first one popping up, as you well pointed out, is Carl on the album. But Psy, I think this might be his only kind of appearance in the top 10, which is a bit shocking because he did so many amazing things. But obviously you're playing with him in the House of All and you've got a long standing relationship. But what's your thoughts on Psy as a drummer? And
he's a great drummer, Psy. He's different style, really. He's very, funky Psy. He was given that name for a reason, but he's like a human drum machine in some ways, a very precise drummer, but great to play with, great to sort of sit on top of, not literally, obviously, because that would be weird, but for Psy to sort of keep that, rigid, and then, but not that he doesn't put in some fantastic roles and things, but he's great to play alongside, it's a very interesting thing. And that was, to be fair, the chance to play with Psy was one of the big selling points for House of All for me. I mean, I probably would. It's not a secret that when Martin suggested it, I wasn't at all convinced it would work, to be honest. Yeah. But playing with Psy was great.
I wanted to ask. Go on.
No, it doesn't like any splacking. Like Yeah, when we discussed it with him, it's like when you got the two drummer lineup and you get something slightly out, he calls that splacking.
Slacking, oh, right. Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible, that. It's really, when you get, so if I can get too technical, there's a thing in drumming called the flam. I don't know if you're aware of the flam.
Yeah.
So there's it's a bit like double tracking a vocal. There's a tiny window where if you're slightly out from each other, so you do it deliberately with two hands.
Yeah.
So instead of going crack, you go crack. So you get that kind of, and there's a tiny window there that if you get that, it makes it really interesting. If you do it right together, then you might as well have one drummer.
Yeah.
If you get any further than that, and it just sounds appalling. So there's a skill involved in playing along with two drummers that you have to sort of walk this tightrope.
Yeah, and without getting too much into kind of like, I obviously don't know the personalities between the three of you, Carl and Cy, and the other drummers that came in, but it felt like, and we'll get to the Hex era, of course, and that massive two drum lineup. But later, when Carl and Cy were playing together, it must have been those are two massively different styles, and I always wondered how they kind of are working together. And when you're playing now, I'm trying to work out how the three drummer lineup works, because there's never three at the same time, right? It's two of you. There's
one song where all three of us play.
All right.
It's called Born at Dawn, Dead at Sunset, which on the new album, which if you listen to it, it's got very little drums on it, to be fair.
Right.
Ironically enough. Yeah, so it's quite empty in terms of drumming, and all three of us are on that. But yeah, so it's a tag team. It's a bit like, Big Daddy Giant Haystacks. One goes off for a bit, the other one comes on.
Nice.
Physically.
No. So one of the things someone said was that listening to Ben Sinister and some of that latest stuff is that Cy, like all three drummers were very creative in their own ways. I mean, there's more than three, of course. We'll come to some of the others, but some parts that would have never occurred to Carl, and that it was Cy doing all these creative things, and maybe he's coming from that funk and soul kind of like side. Unfortunately, we won't hear too much more of Cy, although I'm going to do a playlist with a lot of other stuff on it, and he's done, so he was in the band for like 11 years, and
he was, yeah,
very, very nice chap. We've had him on a while ago, and fantastic drums. And this is when I first shared the list with you, I think you seem to be slightly surprised about how many had the P. Hanle mark on them.
Well, I mean, I was in for nearly 5 years, and the band was going 41. We would say 41 for the sake of argument. So you would expect me to be on 2 or 3 at the most, wouldn't you? And if that was the case, so I was quite pleasantly surprised, shall we say?
Well, what came in next? Also, like on a similar number of votes, was Tempo House. So I'm going to play a little smattering of that gem. Well, one thing you'll get is Japanese adverts coming on, so I have to edit them out. But
that's all right.
5 seconds, you'll be all right. Enjoy them. Alrighty, so Tempo House, like famously on Perverted by Language, was the live version. What's your
live version?
The hacienda, right? And everyone else got a close up except for you, I think, on that shot.
You got to see me with my nice sleeveless section. I want a big country in that.
Nice.
It was different times. That's what people wore in them.
What's I mean, you wrote the Leave the Capital. You got a chapter where you talk about recording and going in the studio to do Perverted by Language, I think.
Yes.
What's your kind of thoughts on Tempo House as a tune and how it came together?
I mean, what's striking about it is there's nothing there, is there? It's just bass and drums, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark does a little bit of a tinkle on the ivories occasionally, but I mean, so because that album was quite sparse anyway, because obviously it was the first one we did without Mark, not Riley. Yeah. So basically, Craig was carrying all the melody for all the songs on the album, which he did quite brilliantly. But on this one, there isn't really a melody at all. other than the vocals. Craig sings on it. Craig does backing vocals, but he doesn't play on it.
Yeah, he's just standing there the whole time, right? But
yeah.
It's very unusual.
Well, which is quite a brave move, isn't it? So we've lost one guitarist, so let's not have the other one on it.
Exactly.
So I think the reason it's from the Hacienda and not from the studio is because I think we did record a studio version. I don't think the bass on the studio album is quite as strong or as it would need to be to carry the whole song. So which I think is why we ended up with the Hacienda.
Yeah.
But it works really well. I mean, that gig, the sound of it is shit up because you can get that on YouTube. And it's, I don't know how it was recorded, but it sounded like, you were going through the desk.
Yes, it was recorded. The thing about the Hacienda was they had everything was videoed, so they had a VJ, if you like.
Right.
So they used to. It was really early for this. The first time I ever saw this was in First Avenue in Minneapolis. The Purple Rain Club.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nice.
We played there, and they had video. They had TVs around the venue where you could watch the gig as well as watch the gig. And that was like, what? I won't swear, but that was like, this is the future, this. So then when the Hacienda opened, they obviously adopted that idea. So there was 2 big screens either side of the stage, and they used to live sort of stream. Well, they didn't call it live streaming in them days, but they used to show the gig, and everything was recorded through the desk. So what you have to remember is the sound. So there's loads of them. There's brilliant ones. There's a New Order one. There's a fantastic birthday party one live from the Hacienda. But that wasn't the sound in the room. I mean, the sound in the room got better, but famously, when it first opened at Hacienda, the sound was appalling in the room.
Yeah.
Because it was certainly not a venue. It was a boat sales place. Talking about this the other week, we were talking to Donald Johnson now. Why the hell was there a boat yard in the middle of Manchester? I mean, I know you could sail them up the canal.
It's near the canal, but yeah.
Bizarre. So it was a massive aircraft hangar of a place. So the sound was they got better as they went on, and certainly once it started getting full and people started absorbing the treble a bit, it got a bit better. But the sound was much better on those videos than it was in the room.
That always surprised me because I'm just old enough to have been the Hacienda towards the end, and that's notorious. The gigs I saw, even then, it wasn't great just because of the space itself. But the Steve's bass line on that is absolutely phenomenal and just holds it all together. You don't need a guitar because it's so melodic and powerful at the same time.
And the thing that always strikes me about that, there's so many lyrics, aren't there? That and Garb, if you were trying to edit that down to a song, you could lose 5 minutes out of both of them, which would be a tragedy. But in those days, Mark's lyrics, they're just, I don't know, I remembered them all. He wasn't reading them.
I'm always surprised at that because later he was obviously had his papers out and stuff, but some of it, we've said the Perverted by Language era and those longer form songs, and the ones that didn't make it, like Backdrop and so on, just phenomenal. Height of his powers, height of the band's powers, just phenomenal stuff. And it's represented in this as well. A lot of tunes from Perverted.
With Tempo House as well, because you've not got the guitar in it. The lyrics do stand out that bit more because I'm terrible with not picking up on lyrics, but Tempo House, that's like proper ingrained in my mind. I think it's because you've not got the noise to interfere with Mark's vocal.
Noise, I see. Noise, is it?
It's just So let me ask you this totally off-topic question while you're here, because Craig, obviously phenomenal guitarist, and we absolutely love his stuff. And I have a very strong instinct that a lot of the sounds were coming from his influences. And I've never found out, obviously he's never really done any interviews other than your podcast because he's your mate, right? But, but what were the influences? Can you give us a little bit of an idea of what kind of stuff Craig was into?
Craig was a big Captain Beefheart fan.
Yeah,
very big. And what was interesting the great thing about bands is Craig and Mark Riley were all into Captain Beefheart. Me and Steve could never warm to Captain Beefheart. As Steve said, it sounds like 2 different bands rehearsing in the same room at the same time. So the beauty of a band is you get someone writing a tune that he thinks is like Captain Beefheart, and then you get a rhythm section come on and say, well, I'm not going to play like Captain Beefheart. Because if you all like Captain Beefheart, it ends up sounding like Captain Beefheart. Yeah, exactly. So it ends up sounding like its own thing. So that's the reason why a band is a great thing. You all bring your own bit, and so you get, you end up with the Fall where you get a Captain Beefheart song with country and western drumming or whatever, or vice versa, whatever that would be. So so it's like a very structured rhythm section, that song. So That must have been Steve, mustn't it? Garden, I think, would be more. Garden's obviously Craig. So yeah, so the drums aren't like. I'm basically on Garden. I'm basically playing the riff. That's where I got the drums for that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. He didn't even tell us that much what he was listening to, Craig. I know Captain Beefheart was a big one.
Yeah, we don't want to spoil.
I said before, we didn't say I've nicked that bit from this, or this is this is reminiscent of the Andes pipe band, or I was listening to Longwave Radio last night and I heard this African Afro beat or whatever. We never talked about music.
No, and I get that. It's like I've been in bands where we just do it, and it's like, and everyone's robbing stuff from me there, and it becomes its own thing. But it's beautiful. Yeah. I don't want to spoil the myth too much and pull the curtain back too much. We want to rock and roll's about stories at the end of the day.
Talent Morals and Genius Steals would be the So I think Oscar Wilde. I think
I wrote that.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So next up, again with a similar number of votes, is "Lie Dream" of Casino Soul, written about our hometown of Wigan. So let's have a bit of a gander. I Dream of Casino Soul. Yeah, what's your thoughts on that one?
I love that song. I mean, there's another example of stealing. The drums are purloined or borrowed, shall we say, from Let Your Heart Dance by Secret Affair. That was the original inspiration for the drums, because Mark said he wanted it to be a bit mod, because it was kind of about, the song lyrically was kind of about how new mod bands, particularly Dexys, were trying to get the Wigan Casino audience but didn't really understand them. That's kind of, well, you never say Mark's songs are about one thing, can you? They're never always about. I mean, the stuff, We Wanted Sex in the Dummy's Eyes, I don't think it's too much to do with Wigan Casino, but yeah, so that was the kind of gist of it. But what was interesting, it's not me on the single, it's Carl on the single.
Right, yeah.
And, once you listen to it, you're not going to, who's going to say that was a bad idea? Because it sounds absolutely fantastic, Carl, on that record. The drum sound and everything and the way he plays it is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Tambourine's good.
I think you mentioned that in the book, maybe. Was it that some of the tracks, I can't remember, it was this one that you'd kind of worked up in practice or whatever, or played live, and then Carl played them on the record, or vice versa. Did that happen much? Or?
A little bit. So this one definitely was that, because we did it at a Peel session with me drumming on it.
Yeah.
This one. Look, no, it was the other way around. That was worked up by Carl, and I ended up playing on the record. I think it was just Mark keeping us on our toes.
That's what I'd imagine. I'm not going to dig too much into how much those were pre-planned, and it was just like, you're on this now. I think there's a video later where we see, I'll see if it comes up, with a classic example of like you and Carl wandering the stage at various points doing all kinds of stuff.
He never took that into account. If he was writing the set, he wouldn't say, well, Paul plays keyboards on this, so we'll have these three that he plays keyboards on, and we'll have these ones where Carl plays bass together, because that'd save him. So you're up and down like a bit of his elbow.
And no time in between songs or anything, I imagine. So, and it was a dark, it's like, well, maybe that brings us on to drummer Paul Hanley. Played for 4.5 years in the F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T, apparently, from 1980 to about 85. First gig, the Electric Ballroom. I think you've talked about this quite a lot, because there was that Cramps tour, and I know you've mentioned it quite a lot on your... but, what was your kind of... I don't want you to... Anyone that's listening to this hopefully has read that and listened to your podcast and heard you talk about those stuff. But when obviously we know about going to the Netherlands and stuff, and you tag team in the kind of drums for a bit, and then the American tour. Come back and what was that like for you and Carl to start that proper two-drummer lineup? It's like end of 81 from what I think.
I loved it. Carl was a real big influence on my drumming. Not that I could have hoped to match him, but I loved Carl's drumming. I could watch Carl drumming all day, so the chance to play with him was too good to miss, really. Not that I had a lot of options. I wasn't given a choice in the matter, but what was brilliant about him, what I always say was absolutely brilliant, Carl could have come in and wiped the floor with me. He could have said, you've only been playing 5 minutes, I've been, he's better drummer than me, he's a more original drummer than me, but he didn't. He was really we really got it together, really. Between the two of us, we kind of worked out how to do it so that both of our drumming was improved, if you like. It was just a joy to do, and chance to be able to do it again now is just phenomenal.
Yeah. Did you get any challenges with it, or did you just kind of drop into it straight away? And what kind of and again, you probably didn't talk about it too much, but what kind of patterns did you settle in about who took lead and how you kind of worked out those parts?
I don't know. I'm thinking back at that, and I'm thinking, how did we work that out? We must have had some kind of conversation, but if we did, the lost in the midst of time, because I just remember us doing it. I don't know.
Sometimes instincts in it. You just sort of like you go with the vibe of what's going on around you at the time.
Yeah. So I mean, there are songs. So there's Tempo House where I'm playing the beat and Carl's on the top of it, and there's other ones where Carl's playing the beat and I'm on top of it. You know, so Carl was very good and still is very good at looking at a song and saying, now that I'm freed from the business of keeping the beat, what else can I do? What else can I do with this drum kit that will enhance the song and take it somewhere? So, I mean, Tempo House is a perfect example of that. You know, if you look at what he's playing, it wouldn't make sense if there wasn't a beat in the background.
No.
But on top of the beat, it's just phenomenal.
That's the benefit, isn't it? And that's why, some of the songs, especially on Hex, it's really distinct that there's two parts. And then others is kind of like, when the drums are playing something very similar, do you think that just stemmed from the fact that in the room when you're playing live, it was just this massive sound and we just wanted to carry it over? Or were there any where you thought, oh, this is a bit redundant, I'm not, it's better if I sit back on this?
I don't think there are. I think even in the ones where we're sort of playing a similar thing, the sort of crackle of excitement you get from having two drum kits. Well, Fantastic Life is obviously a song that you could do with one drummer.
Yeah.
Patterns we both play are pretty similar, but that sort of lift you get from having two drummers, it's worth the entrance fee, if you know what I mean. I think it's like having two guitarists. You know, sometimes they'll both play the same thing, and you'll get more power and you'll get more pack. Sometimes they play something different, and you get a bit more intricate and a bit more weaving. So that's basically the approach, is to treat it like two guitarists, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask you a little bit more about Carl and about your influences and stuff in a bit, but in the interest of moving through the list, what's up next is Container Drivers, another one off Grotesque. Grotesque is my favorite record. I just absolutely love the poppiness of the tunes. But let's have a listen to Container Drivers.
Why do you always get Japanese about it?
I'm in Japan.
That would work. That would make sense then, yeah.
Now Riley's in the cutoff. Everyone's getting their arms out and their guns out. What's your thoughts on Container Drivers and kind of that Grotesque era in general?
Oh well, going and making an LP for a 16-year-old lad. That was just wow. Just a chance to be in a studio. When we first went in the studio, I'd never been in. I didn't know what I was doing at live gigs. Never mind in the studio. I had no idea what to expect. I knew nothing about how drum kits were recorded or anything else. So just to be able to do that and make a record, it wasn't like you got to go in and learn how to do it. We were making records. You know, it was like one of the first things I did. We went in to do City of Goblins and How I Wrote Plastic Man. That was like a month after I joined the band. So yeah, it was fantastic. I didn't know that I could do anything wrong, because I didn't know what the rules were in terms of recording or anything else. It wasn't like I was saying, you've got that mic too near the bass drum, I prefer it this far out. It was just an art. They might as well have been doing magic as far as I'm concerned, engineers in studios. But that was brilliant. That was because, you know, to be given that opportunity to sort of stick out a bit in Container Drivers, you know, because I was a bit nervous about sticking out a bit, because I thought, well, keep my head down here, you know, obviously. But no, I was given lots of freedom, and that Mark said, you need to keep, you know, I kept doing them drum rolls, and you need to make them longer, you know. What, really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the right length for a drum roll. That's just ridiculous. But anyway, it kind of works in the song, doesn't it?
Yeah. There is there
wasn't many opportunities where Mark said you need to make your drum rolls longer. I don't think that happened more than once in the whole time I was in the band.
No, that's one of the things things I would have picked up as well on Witch Trials. Carl's doing fills and stuff all over the place, and I just wondered by the next album, we're back to this.
Oh, I don't think when they recorded Witch Trials, I don't think Mark had the authority to tell Carl to do less drum rolls. It was a bit much more democratic, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Hence why it didn't last.
There's no place for democracy in rock and roll.
It's difficult. It's a difficult one, democracy in rock and roll. It doesn't always work. Very often doesn't work.
No, I mean there's ups and downs, but the products here, the rock and roll stands for itself, right? So there was definitely something in it. But the thing is about the Fall, as you've said many times, and is that it was a band. It was everyone. It wouldn't if it was just Mark. It would have been all right. But
not at all.
Because Steve was amazing, and you were amazing, and Carl and Craig, and
yeah. So I always said the balance is between doing exactly what Mark tells you, which makes it completely unlistenable, and giving him what he really needs. That's the skill. So he says, make it sound like a cardboard box. Well, if it did sound like a cardboard box, it'd be bloody awful. But if you're totally wired, it sounds great, I think, because it was me saying, not just because me, but he says, play it like a snake, and you do something with that. You can't really play it like a snake. You have to interpret what he says. So, I mean, it's a brilliant thing. It's a brilliant way to be, because the thing about musicians, the most stifling thing is when you know what you're doing and you do it. You know what you're doing, you do what you're doing. So the great thing about being in bands is if someone comes up with an idea and you think, what the hell's that? That's a bizarre idea. But then you work with that and make something out of it. That's when music and when the bands are just phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, well, so a lot of people chipped in on Container Drivers. Sounds like the drums are being played while falling down the stairs. I've never heard a longer drum roll, 3 or 4 in a row. It's so vintage rockabilly. You think it was recorded at the Memphis version of the Wheel Tappers and Shunters Social Club.
I like that.
Nice,
that would be great, wouldn't it?
I didn't write down who wrote those, but some wise person out there did. And noting the fact that there's a song called Kick a Conspiracy, which has no kick drum at all, apart from one at halfway through.
That's right, yeah.
Apparently.
Hey, I've never thought of that. Yeah, there's hardly any kick drum on that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on. In sort of joint 6th, we've dropped a few places down. We have a little bit of a change in style, a different drummer, one that we spoke to quite recently, Mike Lee, and we've got Roush Rumble. So let's have a listen to this, Jem. He never stopped, did he?
What, the children or the Japanese?
Selling this Roomba, having a Hoover, robot Hoovers, whatever next.
Oh, robot.
Yeah. Fucking hell. Jesus
Christ.
Motorbikes. All right, come on.
Last 10. This is a groovy number. Oh! A rouse, a rumble, a rouse, a rumble is valiant, valiant. The promoter is a jerk, and the promoter is a jerk.
I'd cut his fill off in the middle. Roush Rumble and the Mike Lee era in general. You've written about it a little bit and chipped in here and there, but what was your thoughts on Mike and that era?
Well, I mean, I think people have started to think that I didn't like Mike. The thing that I was quite thrown by was when he first joined and they were playing stuff with Carl, and that was just really odd, I mean, it was quite, especially for me as a big Carl fan, I was like, what the bleeding hell's going on here? But I think once songs started getting written with him in mind, knowing that he was the drummer, they were great. I mean, Ocean was fantastic and brilliant, absolutely phenomenal record. I mean, it's a weird sound, isn't it? It's a weird production on that record. I mean, it's very odd, but great though. I mean, and that's a great live version, that, isn't it? It's a really exciting version, that.
Yeah, Total is a great record.
I've never been convinced by the rotor toms, though, I have to say. Never been convinced by the...
It's a nice sound. It's just such a weird one, isn't it? It was great chatting to him. He told us all the background on that stuff, and it's and a lot of people, because he was only there a short period, but obviously Dragnet was kind of a pivotal record, moving out of the punk into kind of what the Fall would become, and a lot of people are saying he was right for the time, like you're saying. He definitely
was. He definitely was. I mean. It kind of went away, like you say, that kind of rockabilly thing came in, because there isn't really a hint of that on the first album or the first singles. There's no real hint of rockabilly. And I think Mark Smith wanted to get that in there. So I think that one of the ways he did that was to get an old Ted in to play the drums, and it worked, It was great,
Did you, because obviously the country and northern thing became a thing. Did any of that kind of carry through when you came in, or was it just that was just the style that was suggested?
There was so once Fiery Jack came in,
yeah,
and Container Drivers is obviously country and northern. It's probably one of the best examples of it. I mean, it's one of the very few. In fact, there's two on Grotesque that do a 12-bar blues structure, and they're very unusual for fall songs. So there's Container Drivers, except as I've said before, if we could all count to 12, it would be a 12-bar. But then there's the other one. There's another one, and what the bleeding hell's it? I'll come back to you. There's another song that follows that structure as well. The People I Like. What's that? Grand Friday.
Yeah.
Grand Friday does a 12-bar blues thing as well. So unusual for the Fall to have two of them. I mean, they don't sound anything like each other, and they don't sound like 12-bar, but it's that structure. There was nothing like that in the first incarnation. There never would be, I don't think. So yeah, I think that was something. It's simple as well. That was something that appealed to Mark. That rockabilly. It's primitive without being naive or stupid. You can play some really good stuff with that, I think.
Yeah, and I think the fact, as you said earlier, everyone bringing their own thing, and that was one of the weird kind of mixes of the Fall. It seemed to be you under scrutiny, but totally able to do kind of what came naturally to each player, which is why that always different, always the same seems to make sense to me. That there were some ground rules, but you could still.
Yeah, but the thing about the idea that Mark was telling people in the band what to play at any point in the Fall is absolute nonsense.
Yeah,
I mean, he didn't have the language for a start to tell people what to play, and neither did the people who he was telling to play it either. So it wasn't like he was writing sheet music down for anybody. Yeah. Nobody was telling anybody what to play in the Fall at any point. It's a myth. I mean, it's one of the more pernicious myths that the Fall were Mark's backing band, and they clearly weren't. I mean, I know you could say that he's the one constant member, so therefore it must be him, and there's a certain logic in that. But at any given time, the Fall is a band. It's a group.
Yeah.
Whoever's in the group, the music's written by those people in that group.
Yeah, that's what's hard to put down, because that's very clear. Like when you get into the 90s, we talked to Dave Bush, and he was playing with Psy, and there's a lot of electronics and stuff going on, but it still had a Fall kind of essence of it. And it's just,
I mean, it always sounds like the Fall, doesn't it? But I love that. There's another era I really loved as well, when it was Psy and Dave Bush. And fabulous stuff. Oh, great
stuff. So, well, moving on to another biggie, number again, joint 6 is the classical from a little album.
Which bit are you going to play?
We'll avoid certain aspects. Let's put it that way. So that's from Reykjavik 83, which I guess is the second time around after you'd been to the States.
Yes.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on the classical Hex Induction Hour, etc.? The history of Western rock music.
Well, I mean, it seems to loom large, doesn't it, in people's imagination? Hex Induction Hour. I mean, I've probably talked far too much about Hex Induction Hour.
Yeah.
But the classical in particular that's one of them ones where it's a 2-drummer song. It's quite easily identifiable. It's not one drummer then with somebody bolted on. It's 2 drummers from the beginning, and the whole thing kind of revolves around that. Carl's drumming again is just phenomenal on that song. It's something that wouldn't have occurred to me in a million years to do it like that, but which is a joy to hear. It's great. I just remember it being absolutely freezing when we recorded it. I know that, but it doesn't sound like it, does it? On the record, it doesn't sound like
it sounds live. It sounds
in the studio. Difficult to tell temperatures in the studio.
Yes, well, yes.
Very much.
A pocket of whiskey LPs. Sort of, just like a derelict house in the middle of winter somewhere in the States, and it's a bit where you're going, it's colder than a mother-in-law's love.
That's a good line.
So the classic sounds like so much fun to play. Especially like you got the 2-drum thing going in at the start, bass, nice. It's not like a dead obvious riff, but it's quite an elongated sort of riff. But when the guitar kicks it, shit in hell, that's good.
It is good, isn't it? Yeah,
it is.
Again, none of that was rationalised. These things are worked out over time. Sometimes they're worked out over time. Sometimes they're worked out fairly quickly. But no one's coming with a piece of paper. I mean, that's such a joy that to get to somewhere without anybody articulating anything. You suddenly, this is great. that's why you're in a band, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, and it stayed great for the next several albums. It was
Yeah. It did, long after I went.
Won't mention what came straight away after, but in terms of although Room to Live is one of my favorites, but we won't get into that. None of them made it. What about so how from your perspective, how did that sound evolve from, you know, when you came in Grotesque through Slate, Hex, Room to Live, and then Perverted by Language, like that evolution was what was that from your kind of perspective?
So I got better, and then we got better. Everybody was getting better, I think. I'm not necessarily more accomplished musicianship. Well, in a way, but not in any kind of technical sense. It wasn't like Craig knew 50 more chords or Mark could play 300 times faster or any of that nonsense. But we got kind of tighter, I think. You can hear that from Grotesque to Hex. People knew what each other were doing, you know, we could work together. And I think Room to Live was a deliberate attempt by Mark to break that up. Rightly or wrongly, I mean, there's certainly a case to be made that he didn't want the Fall to turn in a kind of band that Susie and the Banshees were referencing or anything like that, you know, which is kind of what happened with Hex, you know. Reviews were saying, oh, this is like their Hex Induction are about Echo and the Bunnymen or about whatever. And I think that freaked Mark out completely. So, as I say, rightly or wrongly, he decided the way to do that was to kind of stop these 6 people playing the hearts out at the same time, and he literally did take the heart out of it, really, in a way. You know, some of the you said, and I can't talk objectively about Room to Live because I just hate the whole way it was done. It's
very clear, right? Talking to a lot of fans and then reading, you know, Steve's perspective and your perspective and Phil's, it's like from the outside it seems like a really decent mini LP, but from the inside it clearly was an absolute, after coming off that high of Hex, just to have everything essentially just ripped to pieces, really, without any rhyme or reason of why.
There was a rhyme and reason. Not that we knew it at the time, but I can see what Mark was trying to do.
Yeah,
I don't particularly agree with the way he did it. And I think we were perfectly capable of making great. We weren't. I think he must have thought we were on some kind of mission to become U2, or not that U2 were U2 at that point, but we wanted to be some kind of massive band who ironed out the quirks that got them where they were, and then became everybody's favourites. And that wasn't true at all. You know, that was never true. Mark, you know, he used to say Mark Riley wanted to be a pop star. Mark didn't want to be a pop star. He wanted to be in the Fall. You know,
yeah.
If he wasn't in the Fall, he was going to be. You know, he was going to take what he did and do it again. He wasn't going to suddenly invent himself as a pop star. It was just a ridiculous notion. It wasn't in any of us to be a pop star, really. And then, you know, ironically, the next thing Mark did, not too long after that, was to try and do exactly that. You know, he tried to get a hit. You know,
yeah.
So, but again, rightly or wrongly, it's probably the right thing to do. So that's what makes the Fall interesting, is they've probably done everything, haven't they? They've probably done everything in 40 years. There's never a period where you think, well, for them 5 years, they were just coasting and turning the same album out over and over again, which a lot of bands do. I mean, a lot of bands, you know, if you look at bands that last a really, really long time, there's certain periods where they're kind of turning the handle in. I don't think there's any period in the Fall where they were just turning the handle, I don't think.
No, you could argue the last, some of the last albums when they were getting really comfortable with Kieran and Co. was kind of like they settled in, but there was always gems on there. And one of the things that all the way through we've pointed out is that the Fall will do something once that was amazing and then never ever do it again. Yeah. And it's like, you're like, okay, we've just done, kind of On This Day. We're never going to do anything like On This Day again.
That didn't make the top 10, did it, On This Day?
What's that album?
He's got a formula that works, and he's like, "Now rip it up,
rip it up and start again." Yeah. It's very much that, and so the Room to Live is kind of the prime example of that. But there's examples all the way through of like a great tune, a great idea, never doing them. We've done Maki Cha-Cha for Room to Live. You know, although it's a bit half-assed, it's got those rhythms that don't appear anywhere else on any other Fall song, and it's like, but it's anyway. You know, we're run out of time with it, but we're down to the top 4. Eat Yourself Fitter. Let's have a listen to that one. Here we are. All right, I'll play the Peel. Eat Yourself Fitter? What's your recollection?
I mean, it's hard to imagine writing that song, isn't it? Because I mean, it's 2 notes. Is it 2 notes or 3? I think
Something
Steve
like
reckons
that.
it's 3.
Very simple, right?
I mean, really simple, isn't it? I mean, I love that. I mean, it's not that many bands do it. And Carl was always brilliant in that. You know, we've got this riff, and we're going to take this riff, and we're going to take it up, we're going to take it down, we're going to take it sideways, and we're going to, you know, absolutely take this riff. It's a bit like Stuart Lee routine,
yeah.
Where he just that repetition where you think, oh, it's funny this. Oh, well, I'm a bit uncomfortable now. It's not. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. It's a bit weird. That's a bit weird. And then it becomes funny again because you this repetition thing.
Yeah.
And it's quite a brave thing to do in a way. It's quite difficult. And this day is another example of that, where it's just, we're going to smack you over the head with this riff until you either love it or you walk out and say, I'm never going to a Fall gig again, you know.
Yeah.
There's no sitting on the fence with songs like that. And Eat Yourself Fit is great because obviously the words are brilliant. The thing I do remember about it is that we made the video and Mark had this storyboard, and it soon became clear that this storyboard was woefully inadequate for a song of this length. You know, it's like, what can we put in here now? Because there's so much lyrical content in there. It just goes on for such a long time. It doesn't feel like Eat Yourself Fit. It doesn't feel like it's going on forever.
No.
Whereas some would argue on this day feels like it's going on forever. But Eat Yourself Fit, it sort of bounces along.
Yeah,
you suddenly think, we're on 7 minutes here. Where did that go?
No, it's absolutely splendid. And but in terms of like that simplicity, when you were playing it live, did you ever kind of get tempted or bored to kind of start spicing things up? Because I imagine that would have been a bit of a no with the gang.
We had the version where we used to let the cannons off halfway through. That was always good. And then when we all swapped, no, of course we didn't. No, we played the song. Yeah, we played this. No, yeah, it's kind of. I've referred to it before as it's a kind of out of body experience with some of them songs after a while, where it's not really you playing it anymore. You sort of think, I'm still going here, you know. And we push that to the limit with some stuff, you know, which is an interesting place to be at the limit of what people can stand. It's not always fun to play that, but it's quite satisfying.
Yeah, well, things like On This Day and Backdrop and stuff, which we like, especially Backdrop, which is essentially that one fairly simple riff for anything up to 15 minutes. And I remember Steve talking about that's you're learning your trade, working these tracks up to quarter of an hour. Was that something you kind of got into, that meditative?
I loved it, mate. I loved that whole repetition thing. You know, that the power of that, where you know you're going to play the same thing for 20 times, and it's never quite the same any time. I mean, it's a great place to be in. I think if you can do it well. I mean, I like music like that. That Buzzcocks third album, Different Kind of Attention, the second side of that really plays with this repetition, you know. And it's really interesting to do, and it's like hypnotic, you know. I mean, it's obviously that's where dance music went eventually, isn't it? Where you can just, you know, why do you need to change it? You know, you can just play the same riff for 20 minutes and it becomes something else, you know. I mean, I don't want to be too flippant about it because I don't think it's as easy as it sounds. You don't just keep playing the same thing, you know.
No.
You might think you are.
I guess that kind of one of the things I've thought about a lot, we've talked about a lot, is especially on kind of lyrical songs like the stuff on Grotesque. Did you ever try and kind of back up the stories or the mood of what Mark's lyrics were, or was it just how it
yes, I mean, I think well, whether it was deliberate or not, I mean, the best songs are where the music matches the lyric, aren't they? Yeah. Not just the Fall. I mean, any genre whatsoever. I mean, but a lot of the time we couldn't do that. We weren't privy to what mood Mark wanted from a song when we put the music to it. It was the other way around, I think. So he'd be presented with a piece of music. He'd then find a lyric that fitted that mood rather than the other way around. I think that was that fitted the mood. It certainly didn't fit the meter most of the time. He didn't really take that into account. That was one of the unique things about Mark. He wasn't fitting the meter. I mean, there's a few where he did, like I can't think of it, but there are a few where the meter of the song fits the song. Mere Sood, for instance.
Yeah.
The meter of the lyric kind of fits the riff, but then Mark deliberately makes it not fit.
Yeah.
I mean, which is just completely screws with your head, doesn't it? That so he sings the line which matches a melody line, but they're not at the same time, and it's not in the right place to be a counterpoint or anything else. It's just like on the top of it somewhere.
And you're trying to work around that live. There's a couple of points where you're coming back in, and it's you can see everyone's like on edge about when you're going to come back in.
Job on the Air Rifle was the one for that.
Right.
I never felt comfortable playing that song. We played it for years, and the last time we ever played it live with it was about as tentative as it was the first time we ever played it live, because he said, right, as soon as I say this, you go back into the verse. But you can't just wave a magic wand and go back into the verse. You've got to say, right, it's or whatever, and then we're back in, and then put 5 people staring at each other trying to work out, what do we do now? What do we do now? Which was a good way of keeping you on your toes again, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you mentioned in Leave the Capital that Perverted by Language, probably in the studio was the first time you felt kind of that the studio gave you space to breathe, and that you started to see those two drums as kind of disparate, but still having the kind of connection.
I mean, again, we were all struggling to compensate for the fact that Mark Riley had gone.
Yeah.
There was everybody had to do something to fill the gap. But then what we realised is sometimes it's interesting if you don't fill the gap, which again is a tempo house, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's not fill the gap. Let's just leave the gap, and then you open up this whole vista where the whole thing's got room to breathe. And again, that was brilliant and a great idea. And then of course the next thing we do was get another guitarist in and start playing keyboards on top of everything. So it was what a brilliant way to work. Let's not do that again. Yeah. Again, it's the fall all over, isn't it?
Exactly. All right. So I'm conscious that we've not got you for much longer, so I'm going to drop into the last two. So second, very Fall-ish, a song that only appeared in some weird demo form on Total's Turns and then as a Peel session. New Puritan. I even have a version of New Puritan. Come on.
I've got another few minutes. You don't have to finish bang on 11.
All right. I'll just play New Puritan off Peel session because that's a damn fact. Oh, you know what I'm going to play? Have a listen to this and see if you know what this one is. Any ideas?
I don't know. Is it something like Surrogate Mirage or?
No, it was New Face in Hell, but the instrument, no drums on it. Congas, probably played by Mr. Steve Davis.
I couldn't pick that out at all.
This is from Eindhoven. Yes. So what was going on with Steve Davis and his congas?
Well, the full story of Steve Davis. So you got to go all the way back to the second Fall Peel session. I think it's the second one, where Steve Davis was driving the van, and Mark came up with the brilliant idea: if Steve Davis also played on the session, then that'd take care of his wages because he'd get the money from the BBC rather than just them having to pay him out of their pockets for driving the van. So he played his congas on Rebellious Jukebox, and that was the plan. And then they turned up, and Eric, who was the bass player at the time, took umbrage at this. Depending on who you ask, he wanted to drive the van. He didn't like people in Hawaiian shirts, and he didn't like congas, so he refused to get in the van. So they did the session. Martin played bass, upside down. I don't know how he did that. And then the small Dutch tour coincided with my O-levels, I think it must have been. So they got Steve in to do the drive in there, and then he became the drummer. So some of it he played my kit, but for some bizarre reason, on some of the tracks they had him playing congas instead of drums, which must have sounded bizarre. I was going to say, but having listened to that, it did sound bizarre. So there you go.
It was just a fun kind of weird thing, and I listened to the first time. I'm like, this must have been the conga to this. Like, I remember. Yeah, I think it said you were doing your O levels or A levels, and O
levels then. 16. I was 16 then.
That's mind blowing that you're 15, 16 when you're doing this. Is absolutely unbelievable. My daughter's 16 now, and believe me, I don't think she would. As competent as she is in many things, I'm not sure if I'd put her behind the drum kit with a Fall.
Mark Smith, mate. You never know.
Oh my goodness.
You never know.
If I can take a slight detour into other drummers, I don't know. I know about these characters, and I want to play just a couple of a minute or two from each of them. So let me play just a couple of minutes from each, and we'll see where we are. So interspersed by hours of Japanese adverts.
Hours of Japanese adverts sounds like a polka.
Yeah.
Welcome out.
So Orfeo McCord, who's the American band who did a record, and they were playing a version of Blindness. We had Kieran, and he was in his 2-drum lineup with Darren Garrett they had for a couple of years, about 2015. And then we heard You Wanna off Edgerow, which is Spencer Birtwistle. And there's a bunch of other people. Obviously, Tom Head played for a bit, Dave Milner, and they're
all fabulous, though, aren't they? They're all brilliant.
Yeah. Did you obviously Kieran was on your program and stuff, but and you played with Peter as well, right? As guitarist, was in House of All.
Yes.
So what's your kind of thoughts or knowledge of other drummers, and any comments on any of that stuff?
I think I've never listened to a Fall track and thought that drumming's appalling, or they're always great drummers. You always got great drummers, Mark. I think. Yeah. Fabulous. I mean, Kieran's brilliant, isn't he? Let's face it, Kieran's
absolutely.
that lineup's great. I mean, Pete, absolute genius guitarist, and his ear for a riff is mind-boggling. But yeah, no, I think they're great. I mean, it's a real shame you can't play without Imperial Wax. But I'm always struck with how good the drummers are. And that was not the second true drummer line. It's probably the third with Darren and Kieran. Is phenomenal. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. I'd say one of the things was that Mark definitely, because it was such a bedrock of the band, right? And always top drummers. And obviously, you played with a bunch of other people, but along the way, there was one mainstay that you played with for most of your entire kind of tenure with the F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T. And what was your brother? And what was that?
Yes.
What's that relationship like in terms of your bass and drums?
It's just takes a whole level of pressure off to play with Steve. It's just we kind of work well together, not just musically, but with the anti-Gallagher brothers, we've never had a cross word in the whole time. Really, I don't think. No, it's just one thing you don't have to worry about when you're playing with Steve. You just me and Steve, we're all right, and then we'll see what everything else is going on. But it's a real joy, and I'm aware of the privilege to have that relationship with your brother, where you can, you're not your brother's your mate, your colleague, and you happen to make records that you're really proud of together. I mean, it's an absolute privilege.
I mean, I could gush for a long time. I'll try and control myself, but I mean, absolute phenomenal. Like, with greatest bass player, up there with the greatest bass players of all time. Absolutely amazing. And the two of you working together, but everyone that Steve worked with is right from the very start, right to the very end. Just, just an absolute. I mean, I know I'm not going to ask how he writes the bass lines, because I'm guessing he's just a bass line making kind of.
He is, yeah. He is. He's not a slumming rhythm guitarist, slumming's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. He's not a rhythm guitarist to play bass. He's a bass player.
And a lot.
Because if a guitarist will write a song, and they'll write a song and then work out a bass line to go underneath it, or even on top of it.
Yeah.
But Steve writes a bass line, and then the rest of us have to sort of catch up, or attempt to catch up. It's
the sound of the F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T. I mean, as much as Smith gets his kind of dues, and fair enough, Steve is absolutely that sound, and that's enough gushing for me. Everyone listening to this knows this. They're like, shut up and play some more songs. So the biggest by quite a long margin. And one that I think, we're doing this showdown of best fall songs, which is obviously ridiculous. But this tune has definitely got a very good chance of going all the way, because it's absolutely unbelievable. It's Smile off Perverted by Language. So let's have a little of a watch of when Peely traded in all of his cards to get you on the tube. Wonderful performance.
John, we asked you to choose a band that you'd like to see on. You chose this next act, who we won't name. What were your motives for choosing?
Well, it was difficult, because there are a lot of bands that I wanted to choose. It would have been easy to have picked somebody who's really obscure and.
There you are. Are you standing up there?
Oh, no, sitting down.
Okay, good.
Using all 4 limbs.
Beautiful. So what was the Smile? What's it do for you? Do you agree that it's the greatest fall drum track of all time, etc.?
I don't know. It's difficult to say. It's pretty good. I've just noticed there's 4 from Perverted by Language on this list.
Yeah.
The top 10. That's quite bizarre. That's ridiculous.
It's a strange one because it doesn't get a lot of, like, people don't know. Like, if you're not a big Fall fan, people just don't know Perverted by Language. But it's an absolute beast of a record, and and as a band, I think it's phenomenal. But Smile.
I mean, it's one of them, and it's one of your quintessential Craig riffs, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where he plays one riff and Steve's bass sort of plays along with it for a bit, but then kind of the way they complement each other, the 2 riffs, it's just tremendous. And then the drums are brilliant from Carl. You know, they kind of, again, this is that one where he's freed from having to keep the rhythm, and he just comes up with this counter melody, be the wrong word, but counter rhythm.
Yeah.
And these polyrhythms are over the top of it, which you wouldn't think of, because it sounds like it works on a lot of levels, this song, in a lot of ways. You know, it sounds like it's heavy and it sounds like it's bombastic, but there's some quite subtle things going on as well, I think. And the way they drop it down and they take it up is just tremendous, isn't it? It's
that minimalism. It's menacing, and every element is just like you say. They're all slightly off. They're all slightly adding to that discombobulating kind of feel. Yeah, it's absolutely.
I mean, it's the studio versions, for more intents and purposes, is live anyway. There's not a lot going on in the way of overdubs, but that's a great version on the Tube. There's a great version on the New York one, live at the Speed Trials. I think there's a great version of that. I don't think we ever did a bad version of it, to be honest. It's just one of those things that it's just, once you start playing it, you're off, aren't you?
Yeah, I imagine you get a lot of tension out if you were.
It is the tension is that's the thing. That's that kind of, it's quite hard to pin down. You know, how you do that, how you get a song that's tension. You know, and it's just the right side of tuneful, or just the wrong side of tuneful. Probably is probably more accurate. You know, it's not quite. But everything about it is just, it's very clever without anybody trying to be clever, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I think if you were trying to do something like that, it'd be almost impossible to do. It kind of emerged as like one kind of feeling or one kind of idea. I mean, I'll not ask you how you wrote it, but I'd imagine somebody just started plowing down on some kind of rhythm and everybody else went for it.
I think that's Craig's riff. That's the be all, and it's quite unusual. It's an unusual sort of time signature for us. It's kind of like a 6/8 or whatever it is.
Yeah,
it's like but it's not 4/4. So it's got like that extra kind of feel to it. So it's that, which again is quite liberating, because once you're playing a song that there's a million 4/4 songs. Yeah. So you've got to think of something. This one, it was easy to be different, if you know what I mean, because we were kind of out of our comfort zone, if you like.
Yeah, I really like the way the Fall used to be able to like nail a sort of creepy sound, because it's not something that you can do easily to and genuine. And I do think Smile, that's pretty sort of, it's got an eerie sound to it.
I mean, it's one of them. It's like goth is great, but when you deliberately try and write goth songs, it gets a bit pantomime, you know.
That's right.
The best goth music is people that sort of end up in that sphere without even thinking about it. Sort of even Joy Division, you can get that gothic kind of. There's a difference between gothic and goth, I suppose, but you know what I mean. No, you're trying to write to that, you end up like writing a cartoon, don't you? Which can be quite diverting at times. I think I think Bela Lugosi's Dead, it just makes me laugh every time. They must have had such a laugh making that. It's just the most ridiculous song ever. Oh, anyone who could ever take that seriously, I don't know, because he like throws in every gothic cliche you could possibly think of.
Yeah,
I think it's fantastic. But I gotta say, it's difficult to do that kind of dark, creepy kind of peering round corners kind of thing.
Yeah,
just by chance. And if you can nail it, it's phenomenal, isn't it?
And then the Fall mostly got it right. There's a couple things like City Hobgoblins who are a little bit silly, a little bit kind of, but then
that's deliberately silly, though, isn't it?
Of course. I think Mark was smart enough not to have accidentally written something kind of like daft, right? He was a phenomenal writer, absolutely amazing writer, of course, and this period, like Grotesque for the stories and Perverted by Language for those long kind of like meandering tense things. This is absolutely perfect. Our mate Spen said he loves the Smile drums because they're distinctive, not because of their technicality, just because of the mood that they kind of set. And I think someone else's last one here, and he says, I think you were doing that live at the Witch Trials thing where you had you did an evening where you and another lad talked about it, and there's a clip and you showed the double drumming on Smile, and this lad here says it's the most compelling film they've ever seen, which is
they want to get out more.
I know, exactly. That's a good way to end. So
can I introduce you to Kurosawa, or perhaps
exactly. So exactly. I was going to ask you about influences stuff, but there's a really good article where you did Louder Than War, where you go through some of your favorite influences and stuff.
Yeah, but they're all punk for want of a better word, drummers. I mean, there's lots of influences from elsewhere, of course. Ringo would be number one. I mean, it's saying if you're a drummer who played anything post 1963 to say you're not influenced by Ringo, I think it's just been deliberately perverse. I think. Yeah, he changed everything. It wasn't all him; it was engineers and things. But the way the drums shifted from someone at the back of the room, to being in the middle of a track, driving the track and moving it to different places. That's the invention of modern drumming, I think.
Yeah. Were there any others that you didn't mention in that list that kind of stick out? Because I know there's on Hip Priest, there's a notion, because you probably come across the annotated Fall along your way, and it's people digging into the meaning of the lyrics and the songs. Hip Priest and its jazziness, it gets a little bit of light shone on it. Was there a jazzy influence to your playing?
Certainly not on my part. I mean, that's my drum part. But doesn't somebody actually name a track that it's supposed to influence?
Yeah, we played it, and it does sound quite similar. I've not got it.
I played it since. I'd certainly never heard that in 1981. I'll tell you that for nothing. Where would I hear that? It's not like it was going to be in anybody's record collection, and I certainly wasn't going out to seek out obscure jazz records. I'm still not going out to seek obscure jazz records now, so I certainly wasn't doing it then.
Fair enough.
No, I've never heard that, and it does sound. It is quite that song is quite jazz in a way. Yeah, for want of a better word. Because it's kind of syncopated and it's kind of loose and people are playing around and there's no riff, is there? There's no riff in it.
No centre of it at all, really.
There's no chord structure. There's no riff. So in that way, it's kind of jazz, but it was purely accidental. I don't think it will be. I think some of it will be Captain Beefheart because there's a jazz element there, isn't there?
Yeah.
So Craig and Mark possibly were more influenced by that, but I don't think me and Steve were certainly attempting to play jazz. I'd have failed anyway if I'd attempted to play jazz. I can't play it.
Yeah, that's the best way to play jazz. Wrong, isn't it?
Hey, play a note, a bum note once. It's a mistake. Play it twice. It's jazz.
Exactly. And on that bombshell, maybe let's shall we call it there? Is that very, very happy to talk to you and much appreciate your time, Paul.
Oh no, I enjoyed that. It was good.
No, great. It's great you came along. It's always a bit it's just a great pleasure when we have F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T members on here. Just to, getting to sort of like have a bit of a chat.
As I say, I mean, it's not something we're used to doing, talking about old music, so it's nice to do it now after however many years to finally go back and say, oh yeah, I see what they were doing there.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I'll be going watching it tonight, and I'll probably bother you for an autograph on that.
Oh, you're more than welcome, certainly. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to carry around shitloads of vinyl with me, so that'll do me.
Oh, I did this event in Glasgow with John Marr about Buzzcock's book, and someone turned up there. They must have had 200 pieces of things for him to sign. I might be exaggerating slightly. It's certainly more than 100. Never seen anything like it. They must have had a truck outside.
Unbelievable.
And he sat there and signed them all quite cheerfully.
Well, that's nice. Well, if you need a fourth drummer, Alistair will bring his sticks with him. But I unfortunately. I'm not close enough to make it, but if you make it over to Osaka, I'll drop in.
You'll be first on the guest list. When we play Osaka, you'll be there, mate. Don't you?
Much appreciated. Well, thank you very much.
It's a long way.
It is. It's a fair trek, but it's worth it.
Right. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Take it easy, and
thanks, guys.
Hope to see you again one day.
Yeah.
Take care.
You're right.
Bye.
Cheers, man.
Sarah.
F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T Bottom.